For coming. This is going to be, we're going to do a little bit of slides, like 3 quick slides, but most of the time it's going to be teaching you about a tool, getting you to use it, and hopefully making it so you can implement it and take it home and have a lot of value from it. All right, so it's going to be very hands-on, very useful. If you don't have a computer, that's okay. I'll still give you the link to download it, and then you can download it, check it out. But basically, first, we're just going to talk a little bit about kind of the context of like, why do we want this? Why is this helpful? And then we'll actually look at the tool. So we'll spend most of our time kind of looking at the tool. And if anyone wants to volunteer their numbers, we'll look at some real numbers too, which could be fun. So, all right, so Clinician Profitability Calculator. So what's the problem, first of all? Why do we have this? You got to include a little Seinfeld. But what we see, right, we're talking to practice owners day in and day out. We're specific to mental health. So we're talking to practice owners all the time. And what we see is that many practice owners don't have the visibility into how profitable are each of my clinicians, what are my break-even costs, those kinds of questions, right? They might know like revenue, profit, but asking, hey, how many sessions does clinician A need to do to actually get to profitability? Or can I afford to pay this bonus or this raise? Those questions are a lot harder to get to, right? So that's why we created this tool. What can we afford? What's next? How do we get to, I think Doug was saying that yesterday in like the panel session, right? Like, what's our scenario to get to $1 million in revenue or 500,000 in revenue? Like, how many sessions do we need? How many clinicians do we need? This answers all those questions. So this is a tool that we use in our monthly calls with clients to basically figure all those things out, where they come to us, say, hey, can I afford this 401k? We're like, let's check it out. We'll see. All right. So that's kind of what we're trying to do here. I think of running your practice or running any business as a control room. Like, think about yourself in like a really complicated control room with lots of levers and knobs and all those things. And each of those levers that you pull do something in your business. You pull this one, you're increasing revenue. Well, that brings in more revenue, but does that actually also move some of these other levers, increase costs, things like that? So clinician profitability and really like pay structures for your team, I think is the most important lever that you have in your practice. I think of it as like the biggest lever. Like, you pull it with 2 hands and it influences so many things, right? When you're changing somebody's pay structure, your team's feeling that, you're feeling that, and it's affecting a lot of things. It's going to affect profit, revenue, all those things as well. So again, getting back to why this tool, why this information, if you can get the pay structures right in your practice, everything else is easier. Profitability is way easier, cash flow is way easier. Hopefully your clinicians are happy with the benefits and the pay structure that they have. But time and time again, we see if you can get the pay structures right, a lot of other things are easier to fall into place. For example, when we have a practice come to us, they're like, hey, cash flow's tight, like I think I need to cut some expenses. We can cut some subscriptions, like maybe you're paying for 5 different AI services and we only need 2, but that's gonna save us $20, $40, $60 a month. Versus if you can get your pay structures right, you might be saving thousands of dollars per month, right? Multiple percentages of profit per month. So again, this is, I don't want to put too much significance on it because there's a lot of other important things like utilization, expectations for your team, all those pieces, but this all is key. So that's why we're going to talk about this today. And then just what we do. Yeah, I'm Nate. I should introduce myself. I own Navigator Bookkeeping, and we work with practices specifically to transform their financial stories. So we're all about moving practices from a place of confusion with their numbers to a place of confidence. And also, like, we just want y'all to be more profitable and bring in a lot more cash flow. So that's kind of what we do, and we're all about that. We're all about, like, how can we add as much value, as many tools as possible to give you all the numbers, all the data that you need to really run the business with that confidence on the financial side. All making sense? All right. So this is a funny slide, which we'll get to in a second. But first, I'm going to walk you through the tool a little bit so you can kind of see how it works, what the kind of really high-level version is. And then if anyone feels brave, we'll put your numbers into here, or you can even give me made-up numbers, it doesn't matter. But we'll put your numbers into here, and we'll kind of see how it works. And then I'll give you the guys the tool so you can kind of play around with it. We'll have some time to like try it out, see if it works, all those good things, okay? So this is the clinician compensation tool, and I'll zoom this in a little bit because there's a couple different pages here. This is version 3. So we first created this. I went to a conference in Louisville 3 years ago. It was the first conference I'd ever attended in the mental health sphere. And for my presentation, I'm not sure where the inspiration came from, but the question of how do I pay my team kept coming up. So we made this tool for that conference. We've now made 3 different versions to try to get it better and better and better. And again, I'm going to give you the link for this so you guys can download this exact tool. So let's talk through this a little bit, what it does. Again, the point of this is to figure out your team's profitability by clinician, okay? So this big box here, we're gonna put in all the inputs that matter for your team. So you can see we have session rate here. So if you're thinking about a certain clinician, they get $150 a session. We're going to pop that in. How many visits are they doing per month? Do they have admin pay? What's their pay split? If you're on a percentage, and then there's an hourly version down here. So if you have an hourly rate instead, you can put that in there. Then we have 401k match. So if you have a 401k, you can put that in or remove that. We have employer payroll taxes. Who lives in employer payroll taxes? That's fun, right? Yeah. 7 to 9% every month. It depends on your state. We have some clients in Colorado. They're paying like 12% per month. It gets crazy. But we put that in. What's our rate there? And then health insurance costs as well. How much are you paying for a health insurance piece? All these just autofill right up in here. So your situation just gets filled right in here. And then basically what comes out is you have a nice profit number and a nice percentage that you're kind of looking at. COGS percentage, this number here on the screen is really important. This is what percentage of your revenue is going towards payroll for your therapists. We want this number to be 60% or less ideally. Ideally, it's quite a bit lower than 60, but 60 is kind of the high level. So as you mess around with your numbers, that will change. So if we said this is actually $110 a session and we're actually paying them 55%, then you'll see that this number is getting a lot closer to that 60, right? And we can make it even higher. We can say, oh yeah, and we're actually doing $500 a month in health insurance. And then you can see it kind of shades red. It's like, ooh, this is kind of high. That's probably not ideal. So a situation that you'd be using this for is if you're making an offer to someone or you're thinking about a new pay structure, you can put all your numbers in here and say, hey, does this make sense for us? Or should I try to change some things on my pay structure to get us in a better range on that benchmark, okay? It's also gonna give you that profit. And then if you do want to see the employee side as far as like what they're going to take home, that's on here too. Some people want that, some people don't. But if an employee is coming to you, they're like, hey, what am I going to actually make after taxes? This gives you that piece, at least close to that. All right. So that's kind of that side of things. Questions so far on that? This is like just a very, very zoomed in version for one clinician only. I'm going to show you a full team view in a second, but this is just like one clinician. What is it going to cost to bring them in, to pay them all the things, and then what's left over? All right, we're good? All right. There's also a version for contractors. It's a lot more simple. You don't have to deal with benefits and taxes. So that's the same. And then this is kind of like the OG of the clinician profitability. This is what we created initially. I know it's a lot, so don't get it too overwhelmed. Yeah, but this is the full team view. So if you have 2 clinicians or 57, this works. We have a practice with 75 clinicians and they use this. It does get a little bit cumbersome, so we got to put some summary tabs to like summarize some things. But you put your whole team in here, and it's telling you those same things. And where this is cool is you can get a little bit of a comparison, right? You're like, okay, clinician A, who's fully licensed and has been around for 10 years, they're maybe at a really high pay scale versus that new person I hired. What's that difference, right? How much are we making per clinician? And really, what you're looking at here is you can compare practice pay, which is what the practice is making, or we also split out operating expenses if you want, and then you can see profit margin per clinician. This is really where we're getting at that number of like profit per clinician. Such an important metric. Ideally, you want to be at about 20% profit per clinician if you can. So if we look at this, we can see we have kind of a mix, right? A good amount of people around 20 or so, some people really negative. If you're going to have somebody who's like really part-time, they're probably going to look negative on here, and that's okay. But this is where you can start to figure out, all right, clinician A versus clinician B, what pay structure kind of makes sense? Who's good for the practice? And then also thinking through like, how many sessions do we need people to get to really get into a place of profitability, right? So if we look at like this line here, they're minus $900 right now. That just means they're not covering their operating expenses. So let's move them to 60 sessions. And then, oh yeah, cool, all right, they're positive, but like we can figure out where that break even is. Like we could move this down and then just kind of play around with those numbers to kind of figure out how many sessions does this person need to do at minimum just to be positive. It looks like it's about 30 sessions, right? They're just slightly positive here. So it gives you those expectations so that when you're hiring someone, maybe they're part-time, they're like, hey, I just want to do a couple sessions. You can say, hey, I actually need you to do 12 sessions a week, just minimum. That's just like what we need to be positive with you. And then you can set those expectations with them and hopefully hold them to that as well. That holding of expectations, I love Practice Vital, and they're very good at this. So using them in concert with kind of this could be very powerful. But those expectations of how much capacity do we need people to have and what's kind of the utilization rates, that's such a huge measure, like I was talking about with those levers, a huge lever to pull with your practice to figure out, all right, we need you to be at 12 sessions a week. Otherwise, like, it doesn't make sense for you to be here. Setting those expectations, hard conversation, but that is a game changer when it comes to profitability. Because too often we see practices where they have like a ton of part-timers who are just kind of doing their own thing. And a lot of those part-timers are eating up your time, your resources, and the pay structure may not even make sense to really be bringing in that much profit for you. So it's like, you may not even want that person at the practice. Like, they might be a good fit in some ways, but like, they're eating up all that time and resource. And if they're not hitting kind of the break-even point, they're kind of just a drain on your time and resources, as analytical and cold as that sounds. You have a question?
Yeah, will you speak at some point to where the costs that are no revenue stream, like admin, do you bake those into each session?
Great question.
Yeah.
So this OpEx per clinician, OpEx means operating expenses. Okay. So what we do is we would take your average costs, and that would be admin, leadership, rent, advertising, office supplies, all those things. Take that full amount, and then we split it across all of your clinicians. So I think of it as like the slice of your pie of all of your expenses. Each therapist needs to cover one slice of that pie. Just because those, like you said, those costs will be there no matter what, right? So that operating expense is going to be like an average of your operating expenses over the last 6 months usually, and that will kind of determine like, hey, if we all of a sudden make a big marketing investment or we're furnishing a space, like that number will change, but we still need a therapist to cover that. Rent's still got to get paid, advertising still got to get paid, all those things need to happen. So that's what that OpEx per clinician is going to show you. The practice pay is going to be basically what are we keeping after payroll and benefits and taxes. The profit is going to be what are we keeping after operating expenses. So those are both important, but they're going to tell you a little bit of a different piece there. Okay, so that's like the high level view on this. Again, it's going to be the profit margin, which my benchmark would be I'd want 20% or greater per clinician. And then it's going to give you the cost of goods, which you want that to be 60% or less. Those are just industry-wide across all the practices we work with. We track data. That's around where you need to be with your team. I've heard that across multiple sources as well. So I feel pretty solid about those benchmarks as far as just kind of where to sit on those. So that's kind of the full view, and then just one or two other things to look at on the bottom here. There's a bunch of averages. So you can see like dollars per visit, so you can figure out what's your average rate of reimbursement or session fee. And then over here you can kind of see like averages per visitor per clinician. So this is like $21 of profit per session. That's really cool, connecting to that thing that Doug was saying yesterday, where you're trying to work backwards. If you're saying, I want to get to $500,000 in profit, divide that by 21, that tells you how many sessions you need to get to $500,000 in profit. So it's just like a really tangible way to figure out, man, $500,000 in profit feels far away. You do a little math, you can quickly see, oh, maybe we need to do 200 more sessions a month. That's a little bit more bite-sized that we can make progress on, right? So those averages are really helpful for kind of planning and forecasting on that side. Yeah?
For the practices that are the most profitable, what do you see in terms of clinician pay? Are you doing split pay, hourly pay, like, is it supervisees? Like, what do you see? Maybe I'll exclude supervisees for a second, but
yeah.
What do you see the most profitable and the most successful, and yet still the most impactful?
It is a mix. Like, we see all the different pay structures. I would say actually the common thread across successful practices is that they hold their therapists to an expectation. And there's data-driven conversations happening with the therapist. So saying like, hey, here's where your numbers were. Let's look at retention. Let's look at utilization. Like, the common thread across every successful practice is they do that. Is they have those conversations. They know their numbers, and they have expectations that they hold the team to. Now, that's not really your question. The question is more like which pay structures, right? But that's the common thread across all of it. As far as pay structures, I think any of the pay structures can work. Hourly rates can work, percentage split can work, even a salary can work, though I think that's a lot harder. But it has to come down to, number one, making sure the numbers work. So like you're following these benchmarks, right? And number two, you're looking at those numbers with the clinician. So I would say it's actually less about which of those pay structures and more so about like how close are you to these benchmarks, and then are you having those expectation conversations, or maybe your clinical director is having those conversations with your team, and like regularly, like, hey, we agreed to 85 sessions, you're at 75, like how can we support you to get you up to 85, right? Those kind of conversations. And again, you can use a lot of tools and insights to figure out like retention. There's a lot of practices that get really deep in the weeds. They're like, hey, your third session after intake is when you're losing most of your clients. Let's talk through that. Let's coach you on that to help you improve on that. Those are the successful conversations that are going to really move you towards profitability, I think.
That's when Practice Vital comes in.
100%. Yeah, I love Practice Vital. Yeah.
Can I also say, my wife's a practice owner, and this was the 2026 is the year of realignment. So we said the three things. What is the expectation? How are we going to measure that expectation? And then what's the rhythm of accountability? So if you can do that, you will solve like a lot of those problems. Because we had clinicians that were supposed to see at least 22, but they were hanging around 16 or 17. That went on for months because we just didn't have, as leadership, in place to do that. So again, it's just, what is the expectation? Is it clearly communicated? What is the, how are we going to measure that? And then what's the accountability? Like how often are we checking in to that? So, and then, yeah.
So yeah, that's great, Brent. So as a practice owner, you know, you're going to have to do a good chunk of that, especially those conversations where kind of we come in or someone like us is the numbers side of it, like measuring that. And that's where this tool comes in, right? Is like, you can't have those conversations unless you have data you can trust. You don't have data you can trust unless you have actually solid bookkeeping and data. So this tool can hopefully kind of help you with that, to have those conversations. And then using something like Practice Vital or your EHR, if it has reporting, to kind of figure some of those pieces out. Now, before we test out someone's numbers, I'll show you one other thing that you can kind of do with this. Where our team actually uses this the most in monthly calls is we'll actually copy and paste this, and we'll look at two versions side by side to kind of look at where are you right now, and then if we make these changes, where would we be? So we call that a sandbox because it's kind of like playing around in the numbers. But basically, if you copy and paste two versions next to each other, you could even do it like on this first tab, right? You could just put two of these right next to each other, compare and kind of say, all right, if we're at 65 sessions versus 85 sessions, what does that actually mean for profit and for cash flow? Really simple, it takes you about 30 seconds, but it gives you that plan. All right, if we want to get to this point, what step and step and step do we need to make to get there? So this can actually be really powerfully used, not just to look back at where you've been, but to plan forward, where do we want to get to and how should we use it? So using this as that kind of first tool to think through and plan, I want to get to this point, how do I get there? Great use for that. Because, sorry, I'll get right to you. So actually what we changed in version 2, which I think is helpful, is that this used to just show months, March, April, May. We now make this a 6-month rolling average to get you an idea of average, you know, what's the average of where people are. Instead of like, so-and-so is on maternity leave, so-and-so was sick, so these numbers are off. It's like, no, let's just average it out and get a good idea of where people generally are, and then we can see where they're gonna go if we make these changes. If we make these small tweaks, where can we get to, and where can the practice get to? What was your question?
Oh, I was gonna ask about, I know you said with salary it can be kind of hard. So would you suggest like keeping everybody 29 hours and less, or does it have to become like a full-time role? And is there a con to that if you do that? Because right now I'm just trying to max all of our clinicians at 29. Also, I know what full-time is going to come with, and we're not just there yet. And so I'm curious to know, like, is there a con if I kept everybody at 29 and less?
Like 29 sessions per?
29 hours a week.
Oh, per week.
Versus, you know, versus going full-time, I had like a salary. You said it's kind of hard.
Yeah, I mean, the average we see for full-time is 20 to 25 a week.
Okay.
So 29, I mean, depending on cancellations, would get you close to that,
Okay.
if I'm hearing you right. Yeah, I mean, full-time clinicians are going to be more profitable than part-time clinicians every time, right? So if you can get mostly full-time clinicians, I think that's a win. There's definitely a niche that part-time clinicians can fill, right? Maybe they have a specialty nobody else has. Maybe they're filling up an office space that nobody else can fill up. So there's a place for that. I know you're virtual, but just thinking about a physical space. So part-timers definitely fill a need, but if you're trying to scale, like full-timers, profitability-wise, are where you need to be. Just as far as like if you're thinking about managing 3 part-timers versus 1 full-timer, like just the amount of admin and conversation time even, huge difference, right? So it's a lot more efficient to kind of be going all in on full-timers if you can. And I think they're also just like more dedicated to your practice. They might be able to move things forward a little bit better as well. So if I were starting to practice, I would try to do as much full-time as I can, knowing that those part-timers can fill a niche or fill an office here and there as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, any questions on the tool so far? Anything you want to look at specifically? All right.
I have one.
Yeah.
Is your company the one that's like helping gather the numbers to put into this calculator, like the average 6-month
Mm-hmm.
visits? Is that something like we would be tracking, like on our own, or something that you're tracking and then you're giving us those numbers and we're copying them in?
Yeah, it can go either way, kind of depending on the person. A lot of our clients have an admin person who's already in the EHR, so they'll pull these numbers already, and they'll just pop it in. If they're using Practice Vital, we can pull almost all this from Practice Vital. But yeah, we also can pull that if needed. If the practice owner is like, hey, I really don't want to be in there, we're like, yeah, we got you, we can do that. And then like the point of this, and I think this is the caveat to share with you, like as you start using this, don't feel like you need to get the numbers 99 or 100% correct. Just get it close, right? So if you're like, I have a really complicated pay structure and maybe like this number is slightly off, or I'm not including this $12 a month for malpractice insurance, like just get it close. 90%, 80% even will get you the right idea of like what decisions to make. And that's really what we're trying to do, is use this to make decisions, not show exactly what happened. And sometimes we see people get a little bit stuck up on that, where they're like, I like want it to be perfect to the real world. And it's like, that's fine, but like it's not going to make a huge difference on your decision making. Just get it close, and then you can make the same decision without having it exactly, every cent is accounted for. It's funny saying that from a bookkeeping perspective, right? Because like we need to get every cent accounted for. But for this tool, it's forecasting. We're just trying to get close. So not zeroing in every piece is fine in this case. All right, anyone want to volunteer? Yeah, you're ready to volunteer? Here, let me just show my volunteer slide because it's funny, I promise it won't be as bad for you as it was for Katniss, right? So, no, none of that is going to happen.
Well, not all of them made it though.
All right, so how many clinicians do you have?
So we have close to 30.
Okay,
Growing.
we maybe won't do all of them.
Yeah, no, we don't have to.
We can do do you have a couple different pay structures or a couple different situations?
So I have a unique practice. I'm out of Denver, Colorado. So we're a Medicaid practice. We're a 7-figure practice, and but we're mainly Medicaid, and it's because Medicaid pays more than private insurance in Denver.
Okay. Wow.
So
surprising.
We're very unique. So we actually have mainly part-timers.
Okay.
So we have because we do a paid practicum and a paid internship. So we pay them $25 an hour for their billables, and then $16 an hour for their non-billable. And then we hire a lot of them as postgrads, to get their license. So we pay them $35 an hour for billable, $16 an hour non-billable. And we do have a couple, because we've graduated them to licensure, we have a couple licensed who we pay $42 an hour billable, and then $20 an hour non-billable. Which I don't know that was the right decision, but they kind of advocated for that, and we were okay with it.
Sure.
And so we're W-2 hourly, and that we do offer benefits for our full-timers, our couple full-timers, and we use Gusto, which I think is...
Hey-o.
I love them.
We love Gusto.
Yeah.
He's able to do that.
Yep. And
I
don't know if it's just Colorado, but they require that we have to offer 401 for everyone now. Is that nationwide?
No, I call
It's rolling out to more and more states.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's kind of where the winds are blowing. PTO and 401k are getting rolled out to more and more states. All right, so let's put in a couple of your kind of situations there. Everyone's hourly. So if you want to tell me some of those rates again, like let's start with you said like fully licensed. So let's start there maybe.
So yeah, we do hourly. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So we start them at 42 an hour, but our lead gets 45 an hour.
Okay. So how this is working is it's going to all pull from the table. Since we're doing different ones, just so you guys know for when you're doing this, I'm just going to go into the cell itself and change the formula. And these are easy formulas. AI is beautiful right now. If you're like, I don't know how to do this formula, go to Claude. How do I do this formula? It will do it for you. I'm serious. It is a game changer. It's a game changer in like any cell formula things. So don't get afraid by seeing formulas and having to manually do those. Literally, you can just go to Claude, or you could use chat, and you can just say, this is exactly what I want to do. I want a formula to do this, and it'll be like, here you go. And usually it's good. You got to still check it, but all right. So I'm sorry, I asked it again, but what's your hourly rate there?
For license,
Uh-huh.
I guess 42.
42, and then you said admin pay was
20.
And how much admin time do you do?
We do have a limit for license, so it's 75% billable, 25% non-billable.
Okay.
So I guess if they're full.
So if they're doing 80 sessions, like 20 hours?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Cool, so put that in, 20. Yeah, you're in Colorado, so your employer taxes are high.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Sorry.
Wow.
And then you said you have 401k?
Yeah.
Do you do a 4% match?
We do a 5%.
Wow.
For what they have to be with us for at least, and if they're licensed, they've probably been with us for at least 2 years.
Okay, cool. All right, so we got those numbers in. We'll not worry about operating expenses for now. Let's just worry about the pay structure. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste this for a full-time and a part-time person, so you can kind of see the difference there, first of all. Okay? So this is 80 versus 40, and we'll say part-time. This is awkwardly low to be typing on, so I'm sorry I'm like bent over here. So admin time, we'd say we'll cut that in half as well, and then everything else should stay the same. So if we look at this, if we look at practice pay here, that's how much your practice actually would keep on 80 sessions versus on 40 sessions, okay? So you'd bring in $3,600 from this therapist if they did 80 sessions. If they did 40, you'd bring in about $1,800. And then we can mess around with this, right? We could say like, well, if we're in the middle, or if they go up to 100 or, whatever it is, you can kind of mess around with those numbers, okay? So that's, yeah.
Sorry. Where do you adjust the cost, the OPEX, where full-time you have to pay for benefits?
Yep. So the benefit itself you're asking, or the operating expenses? Because the operating expenses are down here, and that would be a number you would pull like from QuickBooks. If you had QuickBooks or Xero, you would look at all of your expenses, figure out kind of an average, and pull it from there. So this one is just a placeholder of 12,000, but that's where you pull that from. Benefits are going to be in here, so we can just manually enter those in or pull those here. So like health benefits or 401k, that's just right here. So she said 5%, so we have 5% pulling for that 401k.
Those numbers are based on if the visit is $100 per session, correct? Is that what that is by visit, 100?
That's what it's showing right now, yep. So we can update this. I don't know if you want to share that or can share that, but.
It is actually an average of 100.
Perfect, yeah. There we are.
And then, it's 20 an hour but we mainly have part-timers, so it's made like 16 for admin hourly.
Okay. So we can change that to 16. Yep. So we can update all those numbers in here and kind of get that. But really what we're trying to get to here is we're trying to figure out, what's this practice pay? And what that tells you, if you're thinking, all right, I feel like we're ready to hire another 1 or 2 full-timers, this tells you what you can expect from that once they're up to full capacity. You're like, all right, that means $3,700 more in practice pay for us. That's not bad. Pretty happy with that. But we also look at this. We look at, your cost of goods percentage here, what's all included in there. And that looks pretty solid. Remember, that number needs to be 60% or less. You're only at about 50%. So that gives you a lot of confidence on your pay structure to say, hey, we feel pretty good about this. These pay structures are making sense for our practice. If we were looking at this and this was like 62, then I'd be like, all right, you're okay, but maybe you want to make sure you're not adding any more benefits, right? Like if PTO comes through, you're like, we actually don't have space for that. We need to adjust before we do that. And that's where a lot of those conversations happen with practice owners.
Colorado requires PTO now, I think.
Maybe, but we do offer, the part-time, everyone after 90 days, part-time PTO, and then what we do, I don't know, I haven't checked on it, but we do offer it at the non-billable.
Okay.
That's how we save.
You do it basically off the admin rate,
Yeah. So it's at the.
It's confusing on that side,
20
but
hours of the PTO.
We offer it at the non-billable.
but what you want to think about when you're making those pay structures is to give yourself margin for any changes that come down the pipeline, right? Michigan, my home state where we are, they came out with a PTO law last year or 2 years ago called ESTA, and basically mandated that everyone had sick time. So for practices that were already at that kind of 60% top end of the pay scale, they now have to add sick time on top of that, so now their pay structure does not work anymore. So we had to transition a lot of people to bump down their pay structure. Very painful process for the employees and for the employer, right? So when you're building your pay structure, you want to make sure that you're not like right at the top end. You want to give yourself like 5% at least of margin, like maybe you're at 55% COGS at least, so that when those state mandates come through and there's nothing you can do about them, you're not all of a sudden stuck in a really tough place, but you're like, all right, we can deal with this and we don't have to restructure everything on that side.
And we give like a pretty competitive, just because we look at the life, the continuum of a therapist, that we're going to start them at 25 and they're going to go to 35, 32, or 42. And then our model is that we would love to keep them, and we pay our supervisors really well, like 60 plus an hour to supervise.
Okay.
And so we do, and I just don't know my cap on how much I could give each person, because my idea is, okay, they're gonna take a year to get to graduate, 2 years to get licensed, and then in Colorado you have to have 2 years post-licensure to become a supervisor. So I'm like, okay, well I have room to give them raises, and I think that's why our retention is high. We retain our employees because we give them up to, depending on their performance, up to like 5 to 6% increase every, we do that, we do a 90-day eval, a 6-month, and a year yearly, so we can give them half of that at 6 months depending on their performance. So we keep a lot of them, but I'm always in my head like, what is my max? Like if they're super performing, or maybe they don't want to do supervisor track, how do what's the most I can pay them and still be able to run the business?
Right.
So it sounds like I could calculate that in this
100%.
spreadsheet.
Yep, 100%. A lot of ways that we think about this too is if you're trying to think about raises or bonuses, putting them in here and seeing what makes sense, right? Yeah. Oftentimes, I like to do a bonus or an incentive plan rather than a raise, because once the raise is there, no, there's no going back. You give a bonus that's based on performance or incentives. If the practice does well, they do well. If the practice isn't doing well, the bonus doesn't get paid out. So that protects you a little bit. But yeah, running all those scenarios on here is really helpful, right? To figure out like how much of a bonus can I afford before this number gets crazy, right? So it allows you to be generous in a lot of ways. It gives you that clarity, right? Clarity is kindness, like they said yesterday. It's a great way of thinking through it on the financials. Like if you know where you are, you can be more generous, more giving, but while still having a sustainable practice. So, yeah.
One thing I want to add, tied to what you're saying, by the way, I love this. I nerd out on stuff like this too. But what you want to do on the bonuses, I love that, because you want to incentivize your people the same way you're incentivized. You're incentivized to make more revenue. So tie their bonuses to, when we make more revenue, you get more money, as opposed to
you can tie
a flat rate.
You can tie it to retention too. Yeah.
Stuff. So yeah, I love that.
A lot of things you could tie to: retention, visits, all those pieces. So I'll give you this tool in just a second. But one thing I'll show you, I mentioned AI. AI is a crazy world right now. But what it's turning into is allowing us as a firm to build a lot of products and things like that. So actually where this clinician profitability is turning into, and this is something that you could even do if you were feeling adventurous or feeling like you're really getting into it, is dashboards and portals where you can put all these numbers. So this is something that we just came out with. We haven't even rolled this out to our clients yet, but this is basically putting all of your clinician data into a portal that you can access whenever. Okay, looks cool, nice visual. But then basically giving you a calculator, which is doing the same thing as that tool, right? Where you can put in all these numbers, run scenarios, and see what does that mean for our practice, right? So it gives you the break-even point. These revenue numbers are crazy, so don't worry about those. Like no one's making $440,000, I know. But it gives you like break-even point, cost of goods. It gives you a little analysis. This is where AI is right now. So this sheet that we have here is version 3. This is like version of the future that we're going to roll out to all of our clients to give them that ability to do that all the time.
What's your rollout date?
Yeah, this summer. We're doing some beta testing, but I'm just showing you this to show you like the future is scary sometimes, but also pretty cool because tools like this are available to you, right? So kind of that interactive modeling analysis is where we are with AI right now, and that's what we're doing with our clients, but it's like if you guys were really feeling adventurous, that's something you could do as well. That's built on an app called Replit. You could build all that out if you wanted to. So, yeah.
Do a shout out for the Group Practice Scaling Summit.
Sure, yeah. So Brent back there, good pal of mine, him and I put on an event we call the Group Practice Scaling Summit. We've done it for 3 years. This next year, it's going to be in March in Chicago. It's all going to be about AI in your practice and how to actually implement it and use it. So Brent's a market.
AI in your EHR, but it's AI for your operations, your marketing, and finance.
We know we'll be here.
Brent's a marketer. I do finance, and then we bring in practice owners as well who are using it in their practices. So just put that on your radar. There's a lot of events that are not really touching AI right now. Brent and I are pretty focused on AI. So if you're like, hey, I want to learn how to use AI in my practice, honestly, like by the time we get to that in March next year, AI will probably be very different from what it is right now. So just an ever-changing world. So if that's something you want to learn about, yeah, that's going to be in March next year. It's going to be pretty fun. So.